Coming up, we take a look at the value of Kyrie Irving on the court and if it's worth the off-the-court concerns, breaking down the best path forward for the Brooklyn Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Arbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, and let you know that today's episode is going to be brought to you by BetterHelp. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. And Doug. We come into this one with, I think, the perfect off-day conversation. The Brooklyn Nets have been playing winning basketball, by and large, excuse the LA Lakers game. And I think a lot of fans, which could be divided for different reasons, we talked about this pre-show, for different reasons, are questioning the value of Kyrie Irving. And we're going to take a look at it from both the on-court and then on the back end, the off-court factors.
Yeah, we're at a really interesting, sort of inflection point here with Kyrie Irving and where the Nets are, where the maybe even the league is, where he is societally. I mean, this is a probably a much larger discussion than just the on-court, off-court stuff, which we're going to mostly focus on.
We can do it in 30, Doug.
What's that?
We can cover it in 30, though.
Yeah, no, where, when it comes to Kyrie Irving. But, we're at a point now where he's been away from the team for 6 games. It doesn't appear like that's, it's imminent that he's going to return, in terms of where the team, they said it was going to be for a minimum of 5 games, and he had to complete a certain set of things to bring him back onto the court. It doesn't appear, at least that's going to happen on this road trip. But it's opened up an interesting can of worms, questioning, just set of circumstances that have, I think, people pretty divided about what should happen here with Kyrie Irving going forward, and what Kyrie Irving is or who he is as a player, and whether he brings a winning culture to a basketball team or winning on court, off court kind of stuff to a basketball team. It's really fascinating. I've seen this play out. I mean, if you want to use Twitter as the town streets sometimes for how things are kind of going among a fan base, it's really, really fascinating to see the reaction to this, to what's happened here with this team, with this player. And it's almost like a culmination of the last few years of being part of the Kyrie Irving experience. And it's it gets, it's very divided here. and I think the answer is actually in some ways very clear, but also super vague in terms of what he is as a basketball player and what he means to be on your team.
Well, it's interesting too, because you and I were talking, so we got to watch the Lakers game the other night together, and we were having a discussion about you're in some fantasy football leagues and you're having a great debate with your partner in one of these leagues around trusting the numbers versus going with your gut. Yep. And this is not just your gut. If you're going to go that way in terms of Kyrie Irving, there is, to your point, this build up over the last few seasons of maybe frustrations or just situations, the takeaway from purely being able to evaluate him on the court. But I think that in a lot of ways felt apt to this discussion of, yes, and you're going to go through. And by the way, the numbers are very strong for what Kyrie Irving is as a player. And the eye test tells you a lot of this information too. We're not going to be breaking new ground here, but that other side of it is the somewhat unquantifiable thing. How does it impact your team beyond what he does on the court? And I think certainly we're going to be talking about Kyrie, but there's been plenty of examples of this around the league. I mean, you don't have to look beyond the Brooklyn Nets and how James Harden came to be a Brooklyn Net. In what world would you think about certain players, different circumstances, of moving on from a guy or letting a guy leave or trading Anthony Davis to the Lakers, right? And there's all those factors around, do they or do they not want to be there? But at the end of the day, you'll be very hard pressed to look at stats on any number of high profile players in the league and go, you never give them up. You always want this guy on your team, but there's sometimes more to it.
So look, okay, from a large sample size perspective, if you want to look at net rating, which is just like very simply offensive rating and defensive rating for a player when they're on the court or the off the court,
Right.
and the larger the sample size controls for all the different factors, injuries of other players, teammates, like the further you get out on a sample size, the more sort of clarity you can get around a player, because you're not having to control for every little thing, like every little 5-man combination, whether or not Kevin Durant's hurt, whether or not James Harden's on the team, all these different things that happen. If you look at the totality of Kyrie over the last 3 seasons when he's actually played, and this is the other part of the debate, is the net rating is positive, and when he's not on the court, it's still positive, but it's worse, right? So like it's not negative right now with the Nets, and that's understandable. They have Kevin Durant, they had James Harden, right? Like, so you're not going to be a negative team without him, most likely. But when he's on the court, it's just better. So this is an 8,000 minute sample size of him on the court or off the court. Net rating on the court 4.58, net rating off the court 1.32. So more than 3 points better when he's on the court than when he's off over the last 3 seasons. I know what has been quoted to me often is the winning percentage during this time is better with him off the court than on. I'd be very careful about not using that as the lamppost that you lean yourself on to shine a light on your point, because that is binary. Like wins are only 1 and 0s. And so and it takes away all the context behind how much the wins were by, how much they, how close the games were, whether or not like
leverage basketball versus non-consequential games, that kind of stuff.
Of course. Like, whether or not he was a winning player on his time, and then it was the other players that couldn't, pull off wins. Like there's so many factors that go into, and then go into wins and losses. And I get it. In the end, you don't make it to the championship by flashing your net rating up on the scoreboard and telling everyone like that's the score.
Yeah.
I totally get this. I understand it. The reason I don't sometimes think the wins and losses are always the best overall metric is because that adds an incredible amount of context into a very finite result, because it can only be a win or a loss at the end of a large, even sample size of minutes, right? Like you boil the minutes all the way down to wins and losses, whereas the net rating to some degree tells a slightly better story because it just tells you exactly what's happening all the times he's on the court and off. And so, and when you look at it that way, which I know for a fact, some people are not going to be able to do it that way, because the first thing you go to and look at is the box score and the wins and loss column for your team. I just think that sometimes that is it's too minute of a way to look at it. Like it's just, and I get that sometimes it's struggling to make the point against it. But if you look at what are the Nets better or worse when not Kyrie is on the court or off the court, they are just better. Like that's just that we have a lot of data that suggests that.
So the start of to take the other side of the coin for the sake of argument, the one question I actually had quickly before we get into a little bit deeper about the Kyrie is there a point where you would say the wins losses become, how much of a sample size, like we're talking about with minutes, is there a threshold where you would look at it and go, hey, now while their team wins more basketball games, but overall, if Kyrie Irving, if Kevin Durant, if you looked at the numbers and you went, wow, the team, it's the John Moran for the Memphis Grizzlies, right?
Here's let me just cut you off for 1 second. The hilarious part about this is they have a winning record with him. They just have a few more wins without him.
Yeah.
And like, it's not like they're a lose. This is what the other thing that's lost
detriment here.
It's the other thing that seems sometimes lost in this W and L column piece is it almost suggests that they're a losing team with him, but that's not the case. They're a winning team with him, and they've won slightly more games without him. So like I think sometimes it gets kind of clouded.
Do you have, that's a really good point to bring up, by the way. Like we're debating about winning versus winning, in some regards. Now there's different factors that go a little bit deeper on this. Did you have up on the stats around the net ratings, Kyrie Irving off on, but then as it pertains to Kevin Durant?
Yeah.
And that's again, by the way, everybody's going to be better if you're playing with Kevin Durant, but it's just a curiosity I had.
Okay, so if you look over the course of like their time together, not just this season, I want to really caution people too about just drilling it only for this season, because
you don't want to do first 7 games and then the next 6 games.
That is probably just too small to figure out, right? There's been a lot of other context here. Who they played, the schedule's been significantly easier since Kyrie Kyrie's been gone than when
Seth
he was
Curry
there.
being on the court.
It's a
for
totally
few
new
games.
coach, like new players. Like we haven't got enough of that yet. So I want to be careful. But if you look at over the course of the last couple of seasons together, when they play together, it's really, really good. Like they have a +8 net rating, and which is excellent. They are a plus team by 1.3 with him and then Durant off. Durant without Kyrie is better. That isn't a shock. Kevin Durant's better than Kyrie Irving. So like it's not a shocker here that Kevin Durant would be better without Kyrie than Kyrie was without Kevin Durant, right? Like I think that's just obvious. Like Kevin Durant's the best player. But I think sometimes too, what gets a little clouded here is the idea. It's almost like that wins and losses debate. It's like, yeah, is Kevin Durant better without Kyrie Irving? Yes. But are they better when they're both together? Also, yes. right. Like I think sometimes want to use these as mutually exclusive outcomes where like when, Kevin Durant's better without Kyrie than Kyrie is without him. But they're much better when they both play together. And this is the other thing that I think sometimes gets missed when you're trying to create a narrative around Kyrie Irving as a basketball player, right? Like, because when they actually hit the court together and they actually play together, that is the best version of it, right? And then the next best version is Kevin Durant without Kyrie, and then the next one is Kyrie without Kevin Durant. But I think sometimes that gets skewed also to suggest that it's worse with Kyrie there. That's simply not the case.
Relative to what, right? Always relative to what?
Well, relative to, I'll tell you what's
no, but what I mean is, and just making your point is that relative to, again, is the team better with just Kevin Durant and not Kyrie? Okay, the answer is yes. But the Kyrie Irving without Kevin Durant team, what is that relative to the league? What is it relative with different combinations? Like, it's still, that's what is getting lost a little bit around the idea of saying either Kyrie Irving good or bad. It's not whether he's better or worse around it. It's what is the team with both of them, with one of them relative to the NBA and to the expectations of what you can accomplish as a team. Like, and that's where I think we can go from here.
The version of this is the worst is when they're both don't play. Like, because like the other, right, yeah, I'll get to that. I'll throw out that number here in a second. First, going to tell you about our friends over at Sweatblock. Look, before I was here with Locked On, there was a version of me that was getting up in front of groups of people every single day, had the dress shirt going, and I always had to do the sweat management. Like, this was a big part of my life, was figuring out how to not let the sweat show. When you're up there, you're giving talks, you're up there teaching the things that are going to make you start sweating. That is where I absolutely needed Sweat Block. Sweat Block wipes were invented by a doctor. They're guaranteed to work. You don't need, or you don't pay. That you always love to hear that. So it's satisfaction guaranteed. It's the dry shirt guarantee with Sweat Block. It doesn't keep you dry. You get your money back. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, throw that in there. Try Sweat Block risk-free today. You can save 20% with promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon. If you're dealing with this stuff, look, it can be super embarrassing. I know how it feels. Go and solve it for yourself right now with Sweatblock. Use that 20% off promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com.
And of course, we also got to tell you about our friends over at Rocket Money. Here's a little tale, friends. I was trying to cancel one of my subscriptions. And guess what? I don't have 3 to 4 hours and multiple phone calls and getting put on hold and getting pushed around and being asked if maybe I want to extend my subscription by 16 to 33 years. I just want to get the thing dealt with. And that is where it's not just for me, because 80% of people have subscriptions that they have simply forgot about. And that's why I love using Rocket Money, formerly, by the way, known as Truebill. The app shows you all of your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you do not want to have anymore. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out that you've been double charged for a subscription. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel. You go ahead and let Rocket Money take care of the rest. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. You go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Seriously, it could save you hundreds of dollars per year. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to throw out here before you know what? Give me the quick
This
numbers
one's
on
easy.
how bad it is when they don't
They
play,
just
when neither
stink.
of them plays. Yeah.
They stink, and like it's like minus 3.3 points per possession or something, points per 100. So like they're just not very good. They're a negative team over the last 3 years when these guys don't play, and that's even including probably some minutes with Harden when those guys aren't there, right? So and James Harden isn't on the team anymore. So if you want to just throw one other superstar level guy in there, they were still a negative team without these two guys. And that was with one of, at the time, one of the best players in basketball. I don't have the minutes in front of me. But here's the thing to remember. That's still a situation now. Like when Kyrie is not on the team now, you are going to get 10 to 12 minutes a game that don't have Kevin Durant on the court, right? And so like it's even
10 to 12 minutes of the worst version of this team.
Exactly. And so I know people want to say, well, Kevin Durant's playing now. Yeah, but he doesn't play all 48 minutes. So like any minute that you can get where you don't have to go kind of live with this situation is better. Again, we're not talking about the off-court stuff and the other things. There's other pieces to this puzzle that need to be answered. But strictly statistically speaking, like the best version on the basketball court for this team, as currently constructed, is to have both these guys available to play, preferably together, and then, kind of stem each other a little bit when the other one doesn't play, because that is going to lead to the best positive outcomes.
Yeah, I have a bit of a philosophical question too. And one of the things I think that factors into this in this current season right now, just in terms of what we're seeing, is this new version under Jacques Vaughn. There's been some tweaks. Things look better than they had at the start of the season. It'd be fascinating if you had Kyrie Irving out there for these games to see what does this new sample size look like, because there is the one piece before let me get to these stats here quickly, because I went over to PvP. I took Nicholas Claxton, Joe Harris, and put them with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, because those are the next two most consistent players that have been around for the era in Brooklyn. Who do you think is the best two? Who are the best two players out of those four? Who have the best net rating together?
What were the options again? Sorry.
Harris, Claxton, Kyrie, and KD. Who are the best two-man net rating?
Is it Claxton and KD?
No, it's Joe Harris and Nicholas Claxton with a plus 15.87, 110 offensively, 94 defensively. That's the beauty of numbers, baby. The Nets should be trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving today. More importantly, though, is that as you go down these, what I did find interesting is, so when you're talking about getting Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving involved in these, best two-man lineup out of these four is Kevin Durant and Nick Claxton on the court, and Kyrie and Harris off, 10.79 overall rating. The first time that you get into just a Kyrie Irving tandem is with Kevin Durant. And the first time that you see Kyrie Irving without anyone else would be with just Joe Harris. Sorry, with one other person.
That's just from this year, or that's from over the last?
No, I'm taking over. I took this over the entirety of their time together, just because ultimately, otherwise, like for example, the Joe Harris, Kyrie Irving, Durant, Claxton off, it's a plus 1.15. That's over 1,100 and over 1,150 minutes. So like the sample sizes in some of these are larger than others. The Kevin Durant by himself with everyone else off the court is a plus 6, just in case you're wondering what you can accomplish. But, and by the way, this total group, all four of them being on the floor together, or excuse me, with Joe Harris off, is your fifth best overall net rating. And here's my thing that brings me to the philosophical question. It's understood that Kyrie Irving, the talent, is at the level that he is. It's understood the best version of this team is when they're both playing. However, do you think that what we've been seeing from Jacques Vaughn and the way that Kevin Durant has looked over these games without Kyrie, that there might be, in the same way we talked about, listen, if you got to get Ben Simmons out of the starting lineup, that's what you need to do to figure him out. I'm not talking about bringing Kyrie Irving off the bench here, but just that separating their minutes might actually benefit the team overall, because you're talking about having a dominant superstar talent and then everyone playing off of him. When you put them both together, while it's still good, maybe there is this world where they're better when they have their own time to be fully in control, operational, rather than sometimes what we've seen, the your turn, my turn, we're both on the court. Are we really getting the max value out of each of our individual talents?
Well, I guess you have to ask yourself, are they playing this different style of basketball because Jacques Vaughn has instituted a new style, or are they playing it because the Kyrie Irving is not there? Like, I think it begins with that question. Like, is it which one is the chicken, which one's the egg here, or are they just separate? Because if you're saying to yourself, well, they're playing a new style here because Jacques Vaughn has instituted sort of like a new game plan around how they're going to attack defenses, which is to say we're going to run things primarily through KD, and his option is going to be if he gets double teamed, he's going to pass out of it, and if he doesn't get double teamed, he's going to take the defender one-on-one. I mean, that's on a easy level. That's essentially what they're doing. Is that because Kyrie's not there, or is that just because they want to run a new style? Because if it's because Kyrie's not there, then yeah, maybe that's going to be a problem. If this is stylistically how they're going to play now, and that's what they're going to do when Kyrie comes back, then Kyrie just makes that version of it better, right? Yeah. Like, because like having Kyrie Irving off ball to punish the Kevin Durant double team is better than anybody else that they have, right? And so I tend to think this is more of a stylistic change that the team is just going to has almost fully bought into now, because it's yielded pretty nice results in the short term. And if you are able to put Kyrie Irving in there, and he's a big if with him, if he's able to buy into certain things, then obviously that version is going to be better. I tend to think it's more of a Jacques Vaughn thing than a Kyrie thing, but I can hear the version of it where it's not, and we'd only be able to just see it with our eyes to know at that point, right? Is that like answering the question? Like, is that trying to? What you were asking? Yeah,
100%, right? Because we've heard, and coming up in a second, we'll talk about the off-court factor that goes into this type of discussion. But from a basketball standpoint, just to drill down on what you said, there's been a fundamental shift. Simplify things. Everyone just serve your role. And if you think about the James Harden era of the Brooklyn Nets, when Kyrie was playing off ball, well, guess what? Maybe cracking the code was turning Kevin Durant into a bit of a James Harden, let me set the table, let me make the right basketball play, the right pass. And that could benefit, as we saw, that could benefit Kyrie Irving in a big way as well. So yeah, if it's a fundamental shift in philosophy from Jacques Vaughn down, then you can start to dream about how good maybe this team can be if Kyrie gets back on the court.
For sure. And that's a great point to bring up around the Harden thing, where they had a stylistic shift when Harden came, because they bought into this new thing, which was the thing that are going to run through Harden, and he's going to be able to pick out the different matchups, and everyone kind of got into their roles. And in the limited time we saw it, it was amazing. Right. Yeah. And so we've already seen that we've already seen a buy-in around like sort of new styles like that when it warrants, when it gets results. And I want to believe that will be the case again here too, because it's gotten results. Like, we've already seen that this kind of thing works, and it's really exciting as a Nets fan to see, okay, like this is something that can work. This is something that's repeatable, like running high post, like running high post Durant, like and figuring him out to pick up like the blitz coverage essentially, and kind of running it through that has paid off dividends. And substituting Kyrie into a situation like that would just be better. Like, he's better than Edmond Sumner. He's better than everybody else. Like, when it comes to just basketball, like, and if he's going to be a guy that just punishes a defense trying to overcommit to like one of the best offensive players ever, then like, of course that's going to work. And yeah, I'm just hoping that we see it that way. All right. We'll talk about some of this off court stuff as well. First, going to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy made easy on Prize Picks. You're just making entries. You're picking more or less on a bunch of different stats. And it's you just versus Prize Picks. Like, Prize Picks figured this out. You're not dealing with salaries. You're not dealing with a bunch of sharks. You're not trying to figure out, like, if you're getting the money in good, because you just know you're going over there to Prize Picks. You're go with the team that you like. Go figure out the Nets one right here. You know the team well. You want to go more or less on Kevin Durant points, Kevin Durant assists. Those numbers have been coming in hot and heavy. Kevin Durant rebounds, blocks, Prize Picks, just puts it up there. You go more or less, and you figure it out. They have every single game, every single sport as well. So you're not just confined to just the Nets. Go, take some action on what's happening around the rest of the league as well. You go over to the game format. You make 2 to 5. You pick 2 to 5 players. You figure out if they're going to score more or less than the Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10x on that money, not competing against other people. Just you versus the projections. Entries can be made in as little as 60 seconds. It's very, very easy. Available in 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Got to use the promo code LOCKED ON. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. You can do the math on all the rest of the options. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
Woo! And so we close out the episode. I think so. There is all the off the court stuff when it comes to Kyrie Irving. And
which, by the way, real quick, I don't want to poo-poo this stuff. Like the off the court stuff. No one here is trying to. I know I just cut you off, but I just want to really get ahead of this. No one is trying to just brush this stuff off to the side. This stuff really does matter. And and I have a great stat on this one, and it's so simple about Kyrie Irving that probably sums the whole thing up. But go ahead. I just want to, sorry to cut you off, but
what I was going to say, Doug, no, it's just that it's to your point. We wanted to obviously cover this, but because the conversation around Kyrie Irving has been primarily in recent weeks and in maybe recent months, maybe recent years, been very driven about the non-basketball stuff. It's important. If you're going to have this debate, here's what all the raw numbers tell you. Here's what Kyrie Irving as a basketball player represents. And now here is also what he represents in totality as a member of your franchise. What were the stats that you were going to throw out there?
Well, the easiest one is when I said I took an 8,000 minute sample size here from PBP. There's 4,800 minutes where he didn't play and 32 when he did play, 3,200 when he did play. So there's 1,600 more minutes that he didn't play on the court over the last 3 seasons, which is hilarious because I had 1 million people comment to me about the different stats here, and only 2 brought up, which is the most glaring one, which is the minutes off are way higher than the minutes on. Right. And that in and of itself is probably the biggest, not even probably, it is the biggest problem. And he has 1.5 times more minutes not played than played over 3 seasons. And it's for reasons that are all over the map, which means that they're probably repeatable. Which means that it's bad, right? And so I found it funny. And look, I didn't bring it up either until one person brought it up. And I was like, oh, right. That's probably the most important stat. The most important stat is he has way more minutes where he wasn't there, where the Nets had to play without him. And maybe that is enough to say it's just too much. It's too much, right? It's too much to continue to figure out if your second best player now is going to be playing. That might be as easy. That might be as easy as it gets to say that it's not worth it. I don't know. This is where it becomes really, really hard.
Well, this was the old, we talk about the Portland Trailblazers and Dame Lillard. Hey, have they ever achieved the ultimate success that they want to? He's one of the best players in the league. Have they done a disservice to him? Okay. And he had injuries last year, but by and large, it was, guess what Dame Lillard always shows up and does? Plays basketball, gives you everything, very consistent. And just in terms of what you try to construct around a player like that, well, that's a known commodity. So this is that thing that we talked about coming into this season. And then a whole new wave of issues come up for the team and Steve Nash and Kyrie Irving, et cetera. But that's my philosophical question. And I think, and maybe I'm pinning this down too narrow when it comes to this conversation, but and by the way, the sample size has been tantalizing. Jacques Vaughn takes over. The team looks better. They're winning basketball games. And you start to think, well, I remember when I saw the roster coming into the year, it made me feel like they could be a team that could be in title contention. So it does get me caught of two minds, because as things started to deteriorate, combined with the way the season started, it very much felt like, what are you holding on to here in the overall spectrum of is Kyrie Irving better for this team or better without this team? Now, if you're the organization, you're thinking, well, baby, if we can hold on for dear life and ride this bull, maybe we can still salvage the final season of Kyrie Irving, the final version of this team. The problem is, to your point, there's no guarantee that there won't be a next instance where he's not available. And I think the biggest detriment over Kyrie Irving's career probably is that the way that his absence impacts the way that you play the game. So if you get 20 games of Kyrie Irving and everyone starts to fit their roles, and then all of a sudden he's gone for 20, you start asking people to do more than they need to. You start leaning on Kevin Durant more, and you start forcing the coaching staff to make really dramatic adjustments. That might be my biggest concern or issue around it, is the way that it impacts the overall rhythm of a team over the course of an 82-game season.
Yeah, there's no argument against it. You can't. It's been too many instances now. It's been too many seasons and too many examples to really make a case, against what you're saying. It's been an incredibly inconsistent run here. That's a total understatement to say. Right. It's been, again, 1.5 more minutes not played than played over the last 3 seasons with the Brooklyn Nets. and for reasons that range all over the place, right? And beyond just injuries. This is what makes the situation really, really difficult. I don't know a solution for the Nets except to, like you said, bring if they want to try to win and salvage it, like then you have to probably bring him back, and that might be against what you are for on a moral and ethical level too. Like this is, it introduces a bunch of different non-basketball questions that are incredibly difficult to answer. The guy is incredibly polarizing. You can see it. There's no one that's middle of the road with Kyrie Irving. It's either you are all for him or all against him at this point. There's very few like agnostic Kyrie Irving people because he just I can just see it, right? Like it's really hard to parse out. I mean, I think we're probably somewhere in the middle, like in terms of just trying to like weigh it between the basketball thing and the other stuff. But the other stuff is just so out there at this point, and you can't. I don't know if there's a benefit of the doubt piece that you can trust that it's something else won't happen right at this point. I also don't know what the Nets options are. Like,
and so, by the way, big factor is, what is the exit strategy here? And we know some of the things that have been speculated on. That's not for this conversation. I'll ask you that we'll get out the door on this. My stance is that for as good as these last handful of games have looked and what we think could be successful for Brooklyn this year, I don't think that they're winning the championship this season. Like that is my belief. At that point, if you're also of the mind that long-term Kyrie Irving isn't going to be a part of this is where we have the stats and we have all the data and information, and we're also thinking about where are we 6 months from now? Where are we a year from now? That's where I think even putting the very real issues off the court that Kyrie Irving has to the side, I think you just look at it and go, if he's not a part of the long-term future, we may as well move on from it now and see what we can build with Kevin Durant. Because otherwise, what are you committing to? A stopgap situation that I personally don't think is going to end in a championship this season. And then trying to figure out where do we go from here with Kevin Durant, bringing in a new number two, bringing in someone else that he can play off of. Why not? If you can, if there's the ability to do it on the market, why not try to accomplish that now? And honestly, I think you and I are pretty middle of the road when it comes to Kyrie Irving, I think it'd be to his biggest benefit too, to get somewhere else. Let's just assume it was LA and just be able to have that reset. Like that's been my kind of stance going back to the off season, and the start of this year did not necessarily pivot me in the other direction.
Yeah, I probably am of the mind of like, if you feel like he fulfilled the obligation, if the team felt like he fulfilled the obligations that they set out for his suspension and they felt like okay about it, which is another slippery slope situation, but that we don't really have time to get into here. But if the team felt like he, fulfilled what they set out as the things that he needed to do to feel comfortable to bring him back, then I'm still of the mind to bring him back and have him play. And that's going to be the best on-court basketball version of the team. Again, as always with Kyrie, there becomes 50 million asterisks that you have to put next to it to try to figure out like what the full situation is. But if I'm just trying to get it into simplest terms, my simplest term is a little different than yours, which is I do think that the highest upside version of this right now for this one season is to have him on the court. I think that's the highest upside.
Oh, I agree. And I agree with you.
The juice might not be worth the squeeze here. Like you might say that upside is not worth all the other things that you have to do to be able to find out if they're able to, get as far in the playoffs as they can do. I can hear that also. So I think, but because there aren't limitless options here, my option would be if they felt like he fulfilled those things that he needed to do, then I would say bring him back and let's see what happens. But with the understanding that I am long over the getting excited about what this could be version, like that part is gone. I think for me, it's not fool me once, fool me 1,000 times. Like this is not what I won't be doing is getting super excited and dreaming on the upside, because I think that part has been fully drilled out of me.
This is no longer the pleasure cruise, and we're just saying, oh, how long will it take to get to the destination? This is effectively looking around going, now, do you think the life raft makes it here in time or what? Which is really a bummer overall for the way things have gone here. I know we're going to get out the door. Little tease around maybe looking in the absence of Kyrie Irving, that Nicholas Claxton, Kevin Durant tandem that's been very effective. Can the Nets, if Kyrie Irving is to return, maybe start to form that Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons tandem to help elevate the play of their quotations third superstar.
Well, now we're really dreaming. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. I didn't realize we're just like rubbing the genie bottle and just making wishes.
Was that not? Is that not what we were doing?
No good. A few other ones I'm gonna wish for if we're just dreaming about like totally any scenario in the world. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. We'll be coming live on YouTube following the game on Tuesday, so go check it out. West Coast swing here, so coming a little later than the normal scheduled programming time, but we'll jump on after that. Make sure you're live, or excuse me, make sure you're on YouTube so you know when we're live, and you can do that by just hitting like and subscribe. Set the notification too, so when we've put up that the YouTube episode is coming, you will know right away. Subscribe over to Locked On Nets on YouTube.
Hey, you ain't never had a friend. You ain't never had a friend like me. That's the genie from Aladdin.
Oh,
all right. And that's Robin Williams.
I was going to say R.I.P. Robin Williams, one of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.